You ever have a moment that haunts you not because it was tragic, but because it was almost perfect? The kind of moment where time slows down, not in a poetic way, but in a suffocating, claustrophobic way because you know you're going to remember everything about it forever. The sound of the rain against the glass. The smell of her shampoo lingering on your shirt. The way she said, "Don't go yet." Like maybe, just maybe, she wanted you to stay. My name's Aiden. I'm 26. I work in corporate communications at a tech firm downtown. It's the kind of job people think is glamorous from the outside, but it's mostly PowerPoints, forced smiles, and walking on the edge of burnout. This is the story I've never told anyone. I call it, I went to drop off her purse. Then she said, "Don't go yet." I met Claire on a Monday. Mondays at the firm were brutal back-to-back strategy meetings, everyone fake laughing at the VP's jokes. But she walked into the conference room like the only real person in a room full of wax figures. She wasn't just beautiful. She was unbothered. The kind of woman who wore power like perfume. She was introduced as our new creative consultant, here for a 3-month contract. Just enough time to stir up a few hearts and disappear. I wasn't planning on talking to her. I wasn't planning on falling for her. Hell, I wasn't even planning on looking up. But fate, or whatever cruel architect writes these stories, had other ideas. We were paired together on the firm's new rebranding project. Long nights, overlapping coffees, and that slow, dangerous kind of intimacy that happens when two people are too emotionally intelligent to flirt, but too curious not to. She had a boyfriend. I had a past I hadn't unpacked. But there was this pull, and no matter how professional we tried to keep it, something electric always sparked in the silence between sentences. One night, after an especially long strategy session, I saw her sitting alone in the back lounge of our office. Barefoot, her heels kicked off, sipping a lukewarm tea like the world was finally quiet. I sat beside her without a word. She didn't look at me when she said, "Do you ever feel like you're good at pretending you're okay?" I didn't answer right away, just stared ahead. Then I whispered, "Every day." She finally turned, and in that moment, everything changed. It didn't happen fast. Love never does when it's layered with consequences. There were glances, inside jokes, and that one night during the company offsite in Vancouver, when we both got a little too drunk at the afterparty. That was the night she left her purse in the cab. My cab. I didn't even notice until the next morning. It sat there on my couch, delicate, beige, with a tiny lavender ribbon on the zipper. Everything about it felt like her. Intentional, soft, a little mysterious. I thought about just leaving it at her desk. But something in me, call it reckless curiosity, call it longing, decided to drive it to her apartment instead. She lived on the top floor of a quiet building just outside the city. When she opened the door, she looked surprised, maybe even nervous. She was in an oversized hoodie, bare feet, no makeup, still the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "I thought I lost this," she said, taking the purse like it was a secret being returned. Then, just as I turned to leave, she said the words that stopped time. "Don't go yet." I froze. She didn't reach out, didn't touch me, just stood there, like she was asking something bigger than what her lips had formed. I turned slowly, met her eyes. "What do you mean?" I asked. She hesitated, like her heart and her brain were fighting over the next sentence. Then she whispered, "I don't want to be alone tonight." That sentence shouldn't have meant much. But to me, someone who'd spent the last 3 years surviving heartbreak by building walls, it meant everything. We sat on her floor, legs crossed, drinking tea neither of us wanted. She asked about my mom, how she died when I was 19. I asked about her childhood, how her dad left when she was 12. Somewhere between the second and third cup of silence, we kissed. And for a moment, the world didn't feel so loud. The next morning was rain-soaked and messy. I left quietly, unsure what that night meant. If it was love or loneliness or a little bit of both. At work, we didn't talk about it. She smiled like nothing happened. I played along even though my heart had started writing poetry again. But then things started to shift. Little things. Her boyfriend showed up at the office one afternoon. Unannounced, arms wrapped around her like she belonged to him. She introduced him as Ryan, and he shook my hand like he could see right through me. And just like that, everything we weren't saying became too loud to ignore. I started getting pulled into more projects away from Claire. Meetings were shuffled. Emails got cold. Someone was moving the pieces. Then, 2 weeks later, I got called into HR. A formal concern had been raised, vague mentions of inappropriate closeness and emotional unprofessionalism. I felt the floor beneath me crack. I wasn't just losing her. I was about to lose my job. And that was when I realized this wasn't just a love story. It was a setup. You don't know betrayal until the person you'd stay late at work for, the one you listen to in candlelight silence, becomes the reason you start questioning your own memory. They say betrayal doesn't always arrive with a scream. Sometimes it shows up in an email, an unsigned HR complaint, a sudden change in someone's eyes. After the complaint, I was put on review, which is a polite way of saying we're watching you and your days are numbered. But I didn't care about the job anymore. What haunted me was Claire. Had she done it? Was she the one who'd turned what we had into a risk report? I couldn't bring myself to ask, so I did what cowards do. I watched from a distance and let my questions rot inside me. It was a Friday evening when I finally broke. I waited in the parking garage after work. I know it sounds messed up, but I just needed clarity. To see her, one more time, outside the glass walls, outside of performance reviews and deadlines and invisible boundaries. When she saw me leaning against the pillar, she didn't look scared. She looked tired. "Aiden," she said, hugging her coat tighter. "What are you doing?" "I just need to know if it was you," I asked. "The HR thing. Did you report me?" There was silence, a full, suffocating minute of it. Then she said, so quietly I almost missed it, "No, but I know who did." Turns out, Ryan, her boyfriend, wasn't just her boyfriend. He was an investor, one of the firm's financial backers. Quiet, low profile, but powerful enough to get someone moved. Or fired. He'd seen us at the offsite in Vancouver. She told him nothing happened, that it was just work. But the purse, me showing up to her apartment, the timing was all too suspicious. And Ryan, he wasn't the forgiving type. He'd issued an ultimatum: distance herself from me, or he'd bury us both. And her silence after that wasn't guilt. It was protection. Claire had tried to shield me, but the machine was bigger than her. "I didn't know how to fix it," she said that night, eyes glistening. "I thought if I stayed away, they'd stop." "Did you love him?" I asked. She blinked. Once, twice. "I loved who he used to be, before money made him suspicious, before success turned him into someone who couldn't trust love unless he owned it." That sentence hit like a blade. She sat down on the curb beside me, and for a moment we weren't colleagues or liabilities or rumors. Just two people too scared to say what they really wanted. She whispered, "I miss you." I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, but just as fast, headlights swept across the garage. It was him, Ryan. He stepped out of the car like he'd rehearsed the scene 100 times. Calm, sharp, possessive. "I figured I'd find you here," he said to Claire, not even looking at me. "You're predictable when you're guilty." Then he turned to me. "I hope she was worth it, Aiden. You just ended your career for a one-night mistake." Claire stood up, fists clenched. "It wasn't a mistake," she said. "And you don't get to talk to him like that." He laughed, cold and bitter. "Oh, I see. You're in love now." She didn't answer, which said everything. The following Monday, I submitted my resignation. Not because I was guilty, but because I was exhausted of being watched, judged, used as a pawn in a relationship that was already dead. Claire stayed a few more weeks, then left quietly. No goodbyes, no grand gestures, just an empty chair in the conference room and a quiet ache that refused to leave my chest. I tried to move on, dated, worked freelance, told myself it was just a phase. But some stories don't end with closure. They just fade into unfinished songs. Then one night, months later, I got a text from an unknown number. It just said, "If I asked you to come over again, would you?" I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour, then replied, "Only if you still have tea." 15 minutes later, she sent the address. Different apartment, different city. When I arrived, she was barefoot, wearing that same hoodie from the first night. And when I handed her the tea, she smiled and said, "Don't go yet. There's a different kind of silence. One that happens after the storm. Not peace, not chaos. Just two people standing in the wreckage, deciding whether to build something new, or walk away with the shards still bleeding in their hands." When I stepped into her new apartment, everything felt quieter. There were no photographs on the walls, no scented candles, no traces of them, just her, and me, and the space in between. Claire didn't rush to explain, didn't throw herself into my arms or offer dramatic apologies. Instead, she poured us both tea, like the last time, and said, "I haven't kissed anyone since you." That hit deeper than I expected. I sat down on the floor again. She joined me again, like time was trying to rethread its own needle. She told me everything that night, how she'd finally left Ryan. Not with a fight, but with a whisper. She packed while he was in Zurich. Left the key on the table with a note that simply said, "I'm not yours. I never was." He tried to track her down. Of course he did. People like him always believe love is something they're owed. But she changed cities, changed her name on LinkedIn, cut ties with everyone connected to that old world. "I lost friends," she said, wrapping her arms around her knees. "I lost my reputation, but I gained quiet." She looked at me then. "But I never stopped thinking about you. Not once." And in that moment, I wanted to believe it all. Wanted to erase the months of silence, the tension, the heartbreak. I wanted to go back to the moment she said, "Don't go yet," and never have gone. But the truth? Love doesn't just pick up where it left off. We spent the next few weeks seeing each other again, nervously, softly, like people who know how badly it can hurt. We didn't talk about labels. We didn't talk about the past. We just existed. She'd read to me while I edited freelance work. I'd make coffee in the mornings while she stood barefoot on the balcony. Sometimes we'd sleep curled up like teenagers. Other nights we'd lie awake, facing opposite directions, haunted by the ghosts of choices we couldn't undo. But then came the invitation. A new startup wanted her as a creative director, a huge deal. London, full-time, long-term. She told me at 2 a.m., eyes bright, voice trembling. She said, "I want this. I need this. But I don't want to lose you." I didn't know what to say, because love doesn't always mean staying. A week before her flight, we sat on the same floor we'd fallen for each other on. Knees touching, hearts full of everything unspoken. "I think we were meant to meet," I said, "but maybe not meant to last." She shook her head. "Or maybe we were meant to teach each other how to love better for whoever comes next." She reached for my hand, held it gently, like it was glass. "If this is the last time," she whispered, "I want you to know, you made me brave." She left, and I stayed. There was no airport scene, no dramatic run through the terminal, just a long hug at the door, and a quiet thank you that carried the weight of everything we didn't get to be. It's been a year now. She sends postcards sometimes, handwritten, no return address. The last one read, "I kept your tea mug," and sometimes I still whisper, "Don't go yet." I think some people come into our lives not to stay, but to awaken the parts of us we buried beneath survival. Claire reminded me that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real, that not every chapter ends with a wedding or a kiss in the rain. Some end with silence, some end with postcards, and some, like ours, don't end at all. They just echo. She didn't save me, I didn't fix her, but we loved in the ruins, and that was enough.